Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Dev Call. Uh, this week we're gonna showcase what the front end devs have been cooking up, and then go through what's gonna be included in hopefully this week's Pinto improvement. It has various improvements to help tractor run along, and additionally some changes to how we measure soil as well as how the system reacts to the change in soil at these high pod rates. So super excited to show. Uh, Maybe first we can come up with or we can showcase the everything chart that Floyd Mayweather Rainweather has been cooking up for a while now and been doing great work on it. He's on the final stretch. So Floyd, you're there. You know, love for you to take the reins and show us what you got.
Can you guys hear me? That sound good?
Sounding great.
Awesome. So let me share my screen a little bit so I can give you guys a bit more color. Uh, 1 second. All right. Can you guys see it? Let's see my screen.
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. Perfect. So this is the everything chart. The idea behind this is to allow you to overlay multiple data points at the same time, right? This is something that is already present in the Beanstalk UI. So if you're a Beanstalk user, you most likely know how this works and what it allows you to do. It's a very powerful tool uh, for analytics for the stat-minded people, you know. So very happy to be able to bring this to Pinto. Uh, so let's have a quick demo here. This is live in deployment preview. So I'll drop a link in the general chat, so you can play with it on your own leisure. It's still work in progress. It's not complete yet, but you can certainly uh, start using it for your short and pleasure if you so desire. So okay, let's get started. Uh, First of all, the chart is built in a way that when you scroll down, it should fill your entire screen like this. See, this is very similar to how the seasons table works. So shout out Sage of the Silos for figuring this out. It looks great, and I think this is how it should be. You know, you have a big screen full of chart data. So yeah, you can hovering over the chart gives you the nearest data point. This is pretty standard to how it works in other charts in the UI. Um, but the difference here is that you can scroll as far as you can go, as far as it goes, and you can see different data points over time. You can zoom in and out. This and scroll. You can zoom in as well. Uh, and here we have some preset time periods. So if you want to see the last month in Pinto, this is what it looks like. And scroll same way. It's really, really powerful. If you want to see the whole thing, you can see it as well, the full data set. And okay, so and you can set a custom time period as well. So if you want to see what Pinto looked like between the 3rd and the 7th of May, you can just, oh wait, okay, because it was at the beginning. So 1 week. There we go. That should be the 3rd and the 7th. And there you go. You have the data zoomed in exactly where you need it. So the big selling point of this is being able to click here and select different data points. So let's see the supply as well. How that evolved over time. So there we go. We have both data points. Everything works the same way as before. can zoom in and out, select different data periods, time periods, everything appears as it should. And you can add more, honestly. You can add, I believe the limit right now is 5 or 6, but there's no real practical limit. There's just like a question of the chart being too messy to read. Um, so it really depends on you, how much data you want. Uh, so here we go. You can see here 4 data points. So the most analytics inclined among you would definitely be able to gather some very interesting data out of this. So from year to date, there we go. So yeah, that's the everything chart. Currently, yeah, it's very usable as you can see. Works great. There's a number of issues here and there, so it's not fully ready for uh, prime time on prod production. But yeah, it's very close, like Freehold mentioned, and yeah, very excited to finally get this out and make the UI even better.
Dude, this is super sick.
Thank you, brother. Thank you very
Great
much.
work.
Super happy.
Yeah, this looks
Super happy
awesome.
that this is back on Pinto. Super happy.
Good shit, Floyd.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is great, Floyd. I mean, if I could just give a suggestion, I'm wondering how much value there is on the dotted lines with the latest value. I see like for every chart, we seem to have a point with the latest price or latest, values.
Right.
I'm wondering once there's like a lot of noise, especially when right now, for example, you're zooming into a specific time frame, yet you still have the current. I'm wondering if that can be a simple like toggle on and off just to reduce some noise.
Mm, yeah, we can definitely tweak some settings here and there. The amount that of things that we can change is limited because this is a pre-made library, right? The trading view chart. Um, so if you want to do some really crazy thing, like I don't know, have 4 or 5 different price axes, it won't do that. But I think we can definitely toggle things on and off, just for keep things a little bit tidy if you're charting a lot of things at the same time. You add a different one so you can see.
Right. Yeah, I don't think this is critical. I would love to have this out. Uh, and think that, if it's anything else but simple to remove those, then I think we push forward.
Yeah, if I forget about it, let me know and I'll look into it. Definitely try to get this out before it's launched. So yeah, that's the everything chart. To you today. Really like this view right here. So yeah, that's about it from my end.
Some Floyd. Thank you. Great. Uh, Pinto Lambo is next. He's gonna review what he's been working on, which is the Hot Marketplace.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
All right, so I am still working on some requested fixes on this one, but it's pretty straightforward. So these data points are showing the listings, the active listings and orders, and when you hover over it, it will show you number of pods. If you click on it, it will show crosshairs across the X and Y axis, and also
Oh, wait, hold on. I don't think I can't see what you're showing.
I can see.
I had to click close stream on
Oh,
Floyd's and
okay.
then like manually open Pinto Lambos. I don't know why.
All right, that's a Discord issue.
Okay, we good?
We are good, and this looks sick.
Okay, and it also has a zoom function. Just with scroll, you can drag and check out the data points. And yeah, there's also a reset zoom function, which will revert back to its original state. So yeah, as of now, this is the functionality that it has. It will slowly be adding some other things to it, such as some more labels on the X and Y axes, mobile view widths, and a toggle for max temperature. But yeah, that's what I have for the demo. Any?
Nice, nice. Can you does it work to select a listing on the panel to the left?
Yeah.
Nice.
Huge. Should this be scaled to? I mean, sorry. What's the x axis here? Just assume this is pod line length.
Yeah, it's dynamic according to the pod line length. Yep.
Okay, got it. So just on your test on your local scan, the pod line is 500 million long, I guess.
Yep.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Cool.
Can we make if you're open for suggestions, I would love if the y-axis was like a log scale. You know, uh, when we're at lower temperatures, or I guess just, the way with the pricing of the pods work, the lower the temperature, the smaller the change in pricing, which, doesn't really encapsulate it, with this linear scale, right? Uh,
Well, I think the concern if we were to do that is that because the line, like the price concentration is going to be different for all points of the line. I think there would end up being like a massive like cluster of prices around like, especially at like the lower prices, they would be like pretty stuck together.
Wouldn't
Yeah,
having a new log scale be not stuck together? I thought what Freeho was saying is that imagine we have I mean, it looks like the pod length's 500 million in this case, assuming there were, listings, past 100 million. I feel like they would all be at the very bottom and effectively look like they were touching the the bottom line, which I thought would be avoided if you made it log scale. But maybe I'm misunderstanding.
yeah, I mean potentially yes, but I mean I'm just saying because then you could say the same about, oh well, what about the ones like in the first 10 million or 20 million or whatever, then those ones would also. I mean, in practice, maybe it's helpful. I think it honestly just depends on which orders are on the market. Because at least like in this current chart, right, like most of the listings are in the higher price range. So I mean, my understanding of what Frijo is suggesting is that like the top ones would then be all like aggregated together, and then the bottom ones would be more spread out. But at least like right now, like there aren't any ones near the bottom.
I mean, maybe Ryan would cringe, but what if we had, wait for it, a toggle?
Oh,
toggles are so much. It's so
But
intense.
I feel like it just does just depend on the distribution of the orders and listings. So it's like either choice will be a little bit, or could potentially be suboptimal depending on the distribution.
I'm
That's my
inclined to
only
just
point.
leave it. Yeah, and I mean it can be revisited depending on how things go, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be very interested to see just what it currently looks like with the actual state of the system. Is there a deploy preview?
I think this is the deployed
Yeah, there is.
or deployed plots, my perspective, my understanding.
Yeah, there's a deploy preview.
This pod line length is 500 million though.
Yeah, so
Oh.
that's going to be fixed.
All right.
This isn't like the finished version, so yeah, that's going to be fixed.
Got it. I mean, my suggestion for the x-axis is that we use the latest or the longest plot plot listing rather than the plot or the total like plot length, if that makes sense. Like if no one puts any plots for listing near the end of the line, it feels like it's going to have a lot of empty space.
Yeah, well, I disagree though. I think it's valuable to have that context of how long the total line is. I think that it should always be as long as the line.
Well, so I'm looking at the deploy preview and not, pointing it at some sort of local fork, and there is still an order because
Yeah,
it looks like
I know.
got it. I didn't understand this
It's
previously.
being worked on. Yeah.
There's an order with the place of line set to between 0 and 500 million, which sort of
Yep, it's being worked on.
just sort of harms the. Got it. Yeah, makes sense.
All right.
And then I guess one more feedback I would really appreciate is that on the table on the right, or the pop up, we have the effective temperature that the user is selling, or the seller is selling his plot at. Like I feel like there's a lot of math for someone. If someone were to buy a plot for 50 cents, it's an effective 200% temperature. I think that would be great to show. And then they can compare it with the maybe we have the historical temperature in which they had this plot, or that might not be possible if they split the plots, or they can compare with the current temperature. I feel like having some relation to the temperature helps a lot in deciding when people want to decide whether or not to buy the plot, personally.
Okay. Yeah, we'll look into that. Can you put these comments in the PR or just DM me either way? But yeah, we'll work on those.
Awesome. Otherwise, this is great, man. It's really cool to see. I mean, yeah, the current table format of the pod marketplace does not lend anybody the ability to really analyze it, or uh, really give enough info for someone to make an informed decision to purchase the plot. I mean, it gives you enough data for like a singular plot, but the view really helps people in one, pricing the plots, into uh, determining whether or not it's a good deal or not. So this is great.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. The only thing left remaining, or I have planned on this dev call, is to kind of discuss the changes we have with PI 8. With the tractor launch coming up imminently, there's been some functions that Pinto does not have, view functions, to allow for automated execution to occur with tractor. So part of the PI is just to enable that, but the other half of the PI is to adjust how demand for soil is issued and how the temperature reacts at high potting rates. So let me find the PR for that, and then I'll send it in the kitchen chat so we can all look through it together. Great, PR 54. I'm not happy to share my screen. Do you think that helps as well? Yeah, we'll share my screen. Hey, can anyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Maybe to preface what the problem is. Upon just looking at the current state, we've been seeing with the UX improvement where people can withdraw and sell in one transaction, more people have been sowing into the field and selling out. And upon further analysis, there are a lot of cases where it seemed like demand was increasing, but the system has considered the state steady or decreasing, and did not seem efficient to me. So, you know, going out, going deeper in how we measure soil, the system kind of uses this two-tier system, or I guess methodology. You know, Typically the system measures demand based on a ratio of the previous, or just the latest in the previous season. Uh, if more was sown this season than last season, then demand is increasing. If less was sown than last season, then demand is decreasing. However, when soil is sold out, we kind of use a different measurement. We measure the time in which soil was sold out. Uh, if the time in which soil was sold out was faster than last season, demand is increasing. When soil was sold out around the same time as the last season, the demand is steady. And when the time it sold out was lower than last season, demand is decreasing. This worked, previously, but then with the soil snowball update, we have this new mechanism in which soil starts very small and increases over time. Thus, we have this very new paradigm where soil sells out much more frequently than it did, at the start of Pinto. And this mechanism was not reevaluated to reflect that. For example, there are instances where, let's say season ago, the soil was 200 and this season was 300. And, the amount, and, they both sold out in the same time. From an amount perspective, it looked like the demand for soil was increasing. However, with our current measurements, we consider that state to be steady just because soil was sold out in the same amount of time. So it was very clear to me that we had to update how we measure demand for soil based on this. So that's the background. The solution is to use both the time and the amount in which soil was sold out and to determine whether demand is really increasing, steady, or decreasing. So maybe before I keep going forward and discuss the solution in depth, does anyone have any questions on like how we measure soil right now? Does it feel very clear what the problem is? Right, I'm gonna keep going. Uh, the first solution, I mean, I guess a change is in addition to measuring time, we measure amount now when soil is sold out. So if the time in which soil was sold out was around the same time as last season, then we check the amount. If the amount that was sown this season was increasing, then demand has to be increasing from our perspective. If the amount sown was the same, then it's steady. And if there's less soil, we still consider that steady. I mean, you could argue whether or not demand is decreasing here or not, but I felt like, in this instant, it seems very reasonable to consider demand steady. Uh, if less soil was sown, but the time in which it was sown was the same, it feels very steady to me. Additionally, if the time in which soil uh, was sold out slower, you know, we still measure demand based on the amount. And basically, independent of the time, we just use the ratio in which the soil was sold out. So, excuse me, demand for soil here is just a function of the amount. How it pertains to the snowball, especially with the tractor update, is that I'll probably foresee that a lot of demand of soil is going to occur right after the morning auction at the same time. And with the current system, you know, excuse me, I'm sorry, demand for soil would have been considered steady because the system would have seen that the soil was sold out on, let's say, the 20th minute of the system. But with the new snowball effect, where the magnitude of soil increases every season, clearly there is the increase. We have to encapsulate this increase of demand somehow. Another case is that demand for the amount of soil has increased, and demand for soil has decreased from a time perspective in which, and for example, let's say it takes 5 minutes for the soil to sell out, but soil is still sold out and sold out more. So, or sold out less. Sorry, apologies. This nuance is not encapsulated with the current system. So, this update should help the system better evaluate itself. Personally, I feel like there are a lot of seasons been misconfigured because of this. I would say like half, maybe like less than half. I would say probably like 25%. But the system is a living system that's based off all its previous states. So these small changes do have large impacts over time. So I felt like it was very strong. I had a very strong inclination to do it now in conjunction with this tractor upgrade. On how this works, or how this seems to solve our problem with measuring demand for soil.
You just want to quickly state how you expect this to play out with the launch of Tractor,
Yeah,
even if it's a little biased.
I'm pretty biased, to be honest. I mean, tractor will unlock a lot of untapped soil demand. I mean, for me, seeing how the simple change in UX with withdrawing and sowing, making that, from two steps to one step, and seeing how that has increased the demand for soil by at least an order of magnitude where it was before, you know, indicates to me that once we have this tractor beast out, people are going to sow uh, way more. So from that perspective, a lot more soil is going to be sown in at certain increments because I believe the current UI, does not have the granularity, and it's so hard to have that granularity, to be honest, for a first version for many people. Just so many variables to consider. One of the axes in which we were trying to evaluate what to launch is simplicity uh, for the user. So I foresee a lot of sows to be occurring, around the same time. We have this one of the parameters we currently have for the users, whether or not they want to sow at the morning auction or outside the morning auction. So I assume right after the morning auction, there will be sows lining up at that point. Because of that, you know, with the current system, demand would probably be considered steady for most of the cases, uh, and increasing rarely. In order for demand to be increasing, they would have to sow within 10 minutes of the morning auction, or you know increasing faster, or sorry, sowing faster if otherwise. So from one perspective, you could say that the tractor will perpetually put the system in an increasing demand state. uh I guess my worry is to consider the instances where we're not in that increasing demand state. So I guess, like, from a bias and not bias perspective, from like what I think will happen is that the system will lean more closer towards a increasing demand state or a steady case than a decreasing demand case. But I don't think that's a question of like whether or not we're doing that on purpose. I think it's just more we're just making our tools more accurate of the state.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm pretty excited to see how it goes. Um, hoping to see some morning auction competition.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if people are gonna sell right after the morning auction and no one can sell, I feel like it's very likely we'll see morning auction action. And personally, I feel like we could refine, this infinite dimensionality in how we can refine soil demand. Like, we have not to date even considered, or the model has not considered how we should change the temperature if there's a lot of demand in the morning auction. You know, like, if we've sold out soil consistently halfway in the morning auction, let's say at 50% of the max temperature, you could totally make an argument that the market, uh, is willing to take that temperature to sell, and thus we could take more aggressive actions to go to that maximum, or go to that new demand. Uh, Definitely an interesting area to like go further on. So I think if we were to see that, we could definitely go into a deeper conversation on those things. But yeah, excited to see what will happen. Great. Let's wrap up this one. This PI change. There is one more PI change I would like to go over as well. And curious for people's thoughts. Let me stop sharing this green one. Pull up the other PR. All right, everyone, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. So this one, comes for me personally with the idea that Pinto kind of has these states of pod rate. We have excessively low, reasonably high, excessively high. And for me, it feels like Pinto is able to oscillate around these ranges. And at the moment, it does feel like these cases are restricting on a pod rate basis. For times such as what we have right now, where we see an extremely high pod rate. From my perspective, this is a dynamic of being in the first or second cycles or third cycles even, where the system can handle these very high pod rates at lower supplies. But once the system is at billions, obviously 100% pod rate does not seem sustainable. Ideally, I mean, just to talk about the ideal, the most ideal system would be one in which these bounds were changing based on supply, uh, such that we can have a more robust system. But in the interim, it does, for me, so it makes a lot of sense to have some very far bound, extreme bound, in which the system can take more aggressive measures in order to bring itself back to equilibrium. Other parameters like the L2SR doesn't really have this problem because the liquidity to supply ratio is bounded from 0 to 100%, and thus there's not this really extreme case where we have compared to pod rate where it can go into infinity in theory, right? Credit is infinite, but it does feel like regardless, even though it's infinite, we still need this, or maybe not need is a strong word, but Pinto stands to benefit a lot to have this excessively high debt. So that's one part, and then I guess the second part is how should Pinto react when it's in this state? My suggestion, my proposal here is that the system wants to aggressively decrease its debt, however it sees fit, more aggressively than it does when it's excessively high. And for me, that means that it should decrease the temperature whenever it sees any increase in demand faster than it sees decreasing. For me, it's a trade-off in that Pinto is willing to stay below its value target for longer, given that it's more aggressively willing to decrease its temperature in the name of saving more or issuing less debt. Yeah, there's a trade-off with staying below value target longer for the ability to issue less debt, and thus is a healthier trade-off. It's a trade-off that makes the system more healthier. So just to, I guess, through in practice, what it means is that currently, if the soil demand is decreasing, we increase the temperature by 1%. At this extremely high pod rate, the suggestion is to decrease this magnitude by half. So it will only increase by 0.5%. If demand for soil is steady, the temperature will stay the same, whereas before it increases by 0.5. And demand for soil is increasing, we decrease temperature by 1% instead of 0.5%. So this very clearly, for me, shows that the system is doing what I feel like is the max it could do in order to preserve debt or preserve, I guess, lessen its pod rate, in the name of returning it back to equilibrium. Curious for people's thoughts.
So it
feels
fun.
like at that stage, we're both leaning towards increasing demand and more aggressively lowering temperature when there is demand at this stage of excessively high pod rate. So by what orders of magnitude do you think the temperature could increase with the addition of tractor and those two upgrades? Or could decrease, sorry. I think this is something that Sarakaya has brought up quite a lot.
I mean, truthfully, my worry is that this will decrease it so fast, actually, in the extreme case where demand is or every season the soil sells out, and does around max temperature decrease of 24%, it'll take less than a month to return back to zero. From my perspective, this is not I mean, 0% temperature sounds great, but obviously there will be a lack of demand for soil at that point. At the same time, I'm curious to see how more optimally this will oscillate around the ideal temperature. I don't think that the system will decrease temperature all the way down to zero. I assume at some temperature the market will decide what ideal temperature that is right now. And from my perspective, we are just giving that we're just giving the system its ability to show that it has a preference to lower the temperature right now. You can make an argument right now that this threshold is so aggressive with decreasing temperature such that it's so aggressive such that it won't ever increase temperature and thus won't increase new lenders to the protocol.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting the current participation of lenders in the protocol. In terms of that, we don't have like a clear understanding what the ideal temperature should be. It's been increasing for quite a bit, and without attracting new lenders. So I think slowing it down, even temporarily, until we reassess demand, is a good idea.
I think two things can be true at once. On the one hand, the protocol itself, without human intervention, only has really the temperature to incite new demand. At the other hand, you could say that every increase in temperature is not increasing the likelihood someone is coming after some threshold. So, from my perspective, this proposal kind of handles that case where we do want a way for the system to increase the temperature. That has to be true when it's below its value target. Else, it feels like the proposition of the field is just removed at that point. On the other hand, we can still let it express preference that, yeah, when there's significant demand for soil, the temperature can go down. Like there is a bid for soil, at this temperature, so why not decrease it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's worth experimenting with at least.
I think, in the town hall yesterday, there was a lot of discussion. There was some discussion on how we could better show this show this demand to other people. I think the suggestion where the UI shows if you sell X soil, you will change the temperature by this much. It's a very cool idea. I think there's a lot of untapped demand just by pure information or just pure UX improvements here. I mean, obviously we have Tractor, which is the ultimate UX improvement, for at least for a V0. So yeah, I mean, Pinto is still, in my perspective, a very experimental phase, and I'm willing to see how this change will affect this temperature. I mean, it is curious to see, once the system decreases temperature to like, let's say 900, 800, will future participants see this current temperature around 1300 as like a point, in which they're gonna wait for that temperature. But at the same time, when we saw this Pinto, our beanstalk deleverage a lot, people were always buying soil, even though temperature is dropping. So it's really the Wild West in terms of low volatility money. But personally, I'm super excited that we still have the luxury to like make these changes and just see what happens, right? Like just the ability just to say, yeah, let's see what happens in a week. I think it's awesome.
Very much agree, and I think Tarakaya here will agree as well.
Yeah, this one's for you, man. This is within the realm of I feel like what you want. I mean, you know, some people have suggested more aggressive ones, like for example, decreasing the temperature by 3% in a relative basis. I am definitely more hesitant towards those. My reasoning is that once you have a relative on the downside, it feels like you would want a relative on the upside too. Like, we really have to reframe our thinking on how we increase the temperature reflexively on the upside. And for me, once you add that reflexivity on the upside, it becomes very or it as in the temperature, one becomes very volatile. You know, Pinto tries to minimize volatility not only in price from our perspective, but in like all axes. It tries to minimize volatility and liquidity in the pod rate itself too. I think people use these metrics as a proxy in which how stable the protocol is. If they see the next season, the temperature is going to increase by 30%, for example, and the next season is 45%. Just throwing numbers out there. It becomes a very dangerous game. It becomes a game where people are willing to wait. Ultimately, the field is designed such that once you have the incentives you need to sell, you immediately sell. You know, one of the beauties of a linear incremental temperature change is that as the temperature gets higher and higher and higher, the relative change decreases over time, such that the impact of you not being first compared to someone else who's willing to sell at the same time is bigger than the relative change. Like right now, if a temperature increases by 1% with 1200 temperature, that's a 0.1% change in your return versus, if someone comes in with size before you, that may lead to a 10 season delay in which you have your pods harvested and just drawing out numbers. But you can see the trade-off there is very biased towards you taking action. With the snowball update, I feel like this amplifies it even further with introducing scarcity. Uh, we have like 7 minutes left, so I don't have enough time, I feel like, to go over the convert bonus. But the convert bonus also has this new snowball effect, where not only are we giving this bonus in stock, we're introducing this scarcity in which how much PDV can get that stock. This new meta of using scarcity as a lever that the protocol you can use to incite action, I feel like is a new uh, perhaps crazy, but awesome paradigm that we've come up with. And yeah, I feel like we just need more data, more data on all these. We still haven't, from my perspective, gotten the full data of the soil snowball into tractor. And it seems like with the convert bonus, we perhaps need a tractor order book for that too, to fully see the effects. So yeah, just talking with you guys makes me feel very uh I keep saying excited, but I'm just like I'm ready to go to see these changes.
Yeah, we're all definitely very excited for that. Are we also including the crop rate changes in PI8?
Yeah, I mean we are, truthfully, systems end is excessively low L2SR. So right now the crop scalar is 0. So the crop change won't change anything until we get above that. I mean, that's a different discussion on whether or not we feel like 12% is too high, for example. Like, truthfully, the system,
Or above
you go to,
12%, by the way.
oh, really? Wow, amazing. I take that back then. I guess I'll say like, it'll take a lot of time for it to go increase above 200%. But yeah, we're still adding that change. I mean, it's an open question on whether or not we want to change that threshold of 12% as the threshold for extremely low L2SR. You know, Beanstalk has historically hovered around like 15 or like 7%, I recall. I'm not too sure the exact numbers, but you know, low double digit numbers for the majority of life, and it turned just fine. So, perhaps we were just too conservative around numbers, like that's also an open question that I would love to like get into more. But as an experiment, we should always just isolate changes one at a time before we keep going. I think one of the things I've learned personally is that there's infinite things to change on Pinto, and every time a change is decided or like, just thought of, it delays other changes. So wanted to focus on this soil change before moving forward on other things we could change. Seems like we have 3 minutes left. That's all I have to present today, or we as the devs. Also, I just wanted to massively shout out to these guys. These guys been working so hard, and this project would be nothing without these guys. So thank you guys for working so hard and putting your all.
You too, man. And everyone in the contract side, you guys are just incredible, great inspiration.
Just reading the kitchen chat right now. Apologies for not reading it. Yeah, I mean, personally waiting for the temperature for 30% and a clear pot line to sow again. I mean, that's the thing with temperature. Uh, the temperature could be seen as a newcomer as very high, but when juxtaposed with the very long pod line, it becomes much more reasonable to kind of think about that, right? If you're willing to sow at 30% with no pod line, what is someone willing to sow at a 30 million pod line? You know, uh, but to your point, I mean, personally, I feel like the UI can do better at showing that more complex nuance. Like for me, when I think of when I see the temperature or when I show newcomers the temperature, they immediately connect that with APY or some like yearly relation to the temperature. When in reality, it's a completely different framework into evaluate the risk to return ratio, right? Uh, one that takes more nuanced knowledge of the protocol, one that needs to understand how the FIFO mechanism works, and stuff like that. So yeah, but on my end, you know, I'm just thinking how we could show that information better. Like, should we have pod rate to temperature ratio showing up? At least on the field, should we show the pod rate in conjunction with the temperature? Right now the field only shows the temperature. Perhaps showing a pod rate or a place in line in the pods, or sorry, the pod line and how it changes over time. Perhaps that will also help people make a judgment. It's yeah, I feel like a lot of unexplored territory there.
I think the way I think about it is you're essentially making a bet that the protocol is gonna reach an X supply, and in return for that bet, you get an X amount of return. I think
Yeah,
that's like the most intuitive way that newcomers can understand it.
I think that's a very great way to explain it, to be honest. Like, you know, make it, saying that you will get payoff when the pod line pays off forces you to have an intuition on how the pod line is paid off and what percentage. It's saying, you will get paid off at X market cap. You're making a bet that the protocol will reach X market cap. It's a little closer. I mean, Pinto can be in a state where it increases and decreases in supply, such that you can't, like, the pot line just churn. You do get closer and closer and closer, such that you can get to the front without the market cap changing to that 60 or whatever. Which is exactly the nuance I'm like you're trying to highlight, that there's like so much nuance. Maybe like you making a bet that X Pintos are minted, and then you could say market cap, implied market cap of this. It's really hard to say. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely closer to how I would probably explain it in like a more succinct way, you know.
Yeah, and right now you can get a 20x for Pinto to print like 65 million. So not too bad.
Not too bad at all. Just wanted to say what Takara, I'm sorry for butchering it, your name, is saying. He's saying that, a shorter pod line is strong belief in return of the investment is the key. Yeah, totally agree. Uh, sold a lot in the early stages, and that people that I've told about Pinto are more interested when they hear when the rate is around 50% or less. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. People have brought up the point that like a higher temperature, yeah, add like a model perspective, yeah, increases the demand, should increase the demand. But on the other hand, the human perspective is that it scares people away. Uh, and Pinto is trying to tiptoe that line. So, for me personally, it feels hard to people to believe that 50% temperature is enough to incentivize people when the pod line is this long. But I mean, I feel like it's a great data point nonetheless. All right, guys. We're 3 minutes beyond the hour, so I want to respect people's time. Thank you guys for coming. This has been great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for your help.
Thank you,
See you
guys.
guys.